if somebody wants to monitor that, but we go from there. But
Yeah.
hey guys, thank you for being here. I continue to be excited that people are being learning based about all of this kind of stuff, because what I have noticed is online and even in our own office and just around real estate in general, some people are going through the 5 stages of grief that the rules are changing. Who knows what the 5 stages of grief are?
Denial.
Like, no, this isn't gonna happen. It's happening, okay? Anger, depression, bargaining. Sorry?
Annoying.
Annoying, I don't think that's a state, but yes. But eventually there'll be acceptance. And I got to stand in front of a judge yesterday and argue a case. And I know I could have won the case, but the city attorney pleaded it down to about half. But I'm charging the client anyway, so I just want to do. But it probably would have cost me like $2,000 to win the case, or I could even just pay the $100 fine and pass it on to my owner, right? So, but those are times when you can either come to acceptance or acceptance will be forced upon you, right? And so what we want you guys to do is to learn the new rules so that we can better serve our agents. And I got to tell you, since I got these forms last Wednesday, I think Thursday it was, I've been reading them and reading them and reading them, and I've been hearing a lot of misinformation. And so sometimes I don't always say, no, I don't think that's right, because I still don't know them well enough to do what I do best, and that's negotiate based on what the contract actually says instead of what we want it to say. But the more I read it, the more I get excited about, I think professional agents are going to have some fun here. So on the new real estate contract, I've got the new real estate contract, the exclusive buyer agency agreement, the exclusive right to sell. We're going to spend a lot of time on today. Jennifer is not allowed to answer this question. How many points of negotiation are there on the real estate contract? It's slightly different than what we have, but it's pretty close. So I went through and I highlighted in blue all of the places that are negotiable on a real estate contract. How many points of negotiation do you think there are on a contract? Be bold, guess. Hi, Angie.
13, 10.
13, 10, 33. Anybody else want to guess?
108.
108, okay. Feels like it. 39. There are 39 different places that there is an open negotiation on your real estate contract. On the exclusive buyer agency agreement, there are 9. And on the exclusive right to sell, there are 17. Think about that for a second. If you got real good at between 48 and 56 different negotiation conversations, do you think you will win most listings and most representation contracts? What we're going to talk about today. Where again, like the conversation on Tuesdays, we might bring up more questions than I have answers for today. And just like on Tuesday today, we might have to continue this conversation. Next Tuesday's team meeting is still all about this and the negotiation. And eventually I want to get into some role playing about being a buyer and seller sitting in front of an agent that wants to steal their skills in front of their peers. It'll be fun. And then next Friday, at 1:15 to 2:30, we're doing this again. Okay. So I keep learning more as we go. I'm going to encourage you because we got some changes. Now I have about a 6 or 8 minute mindset teaching about real estate and how much we get paid. And I can either do that now or I can do that towards the end at 2:30. What would you guys prefer? You get to choose now or later. Later? Hands up for later. Hands up for now. Later wins. Okay. I think that allows some people just to get out of here before I get on my mindset. Sorry. Okay. So again, you can open the contracts online. I think we printed like 10 or 12 copies around. If you don't have a hard copy, either open it up in your phone or buddy up with somebody that has one. We've got some, like if we have one per table, like there's a table that doesn't have them, but you can go on there. There's 2 folders. There's updated forms and there's new forms. There are some new forms. My favorite new form is the retainer agreements. I love a good retainer agreement. That's going to be one of my strongest negotiation points. Oh, we have more coming. Robin is the boss.
They're coming.
They're coming, they're coming.
Where's the printer?
We had at least one per table. We'll be in good shape. Anybody care if I sit? Like PWU, I would just have failed the audition. All right. On your real estate sales contract, page 1 is very familiar to you all. Page 2 is very familiar. Page 3 is very familiar. Page 4 is remarkably different in some key ways. So let's talk about this. Everybody had time to find theirs online, find it on paper?
Yep.
So Raleen, get in there next to Chris and Jackie and share it. On the real estate sales contract, this is gonna descend into chaos. I can't. All right. So on your real estate contract, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 places that are negotiable on that one page alone. On line 164, under paragraph 4, the purchase price is negotiable and always has been negotiable. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, if agents ever had a problem with saying, well, that's negotiable. Even if they're a transaction broker and shouldn't be saying, that's negotiable. Right? When you're a transaction broker, you should never have been saying it's negotiable. But when you're an agent, you can say that's negotiable. Everybody understand the difference?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So it's funny to me, this is just a little side note, and I always have to be careful with sarcasm, but it's who I am. It's funny to me that agents are kind of all aflutter right now, that now all of a sudden how their money is negotiable, and they're like, whoa, I don't know if I like that. All right. It's always been, right? And so is everything, all these points we're going to talk about. So anyway, purchase price is still negotiable. You go to line 167, earnest money, is that negotiable?
Yeah.
Sure it is.
Heck yes, it is. Heck yes, it is. You go down to line 176. So not only the amount of earnest money in 180, the amount of earnest money, but also the where it goes is negotiable, right? Like there are some companies that want to hold the earnest money if they're the listing agents.
And it doesn't have to be cash.
And it
right?
doesn't have to be cash. And by the way, it doesn't have to be in 2 days or 3 days or whatever this thing. You can change the days. These are negotiable issues. And by the way, can your earnest money strengthen or lessen your?
Absolutely.
Certainly it can. What's another thing about earnest money that can be negotiated? Refundable or not? Absolutely. So these are things that can be negotiated. The total amount financed, is that negotiable? Sure it is. Sure. My wife and I were buying a car the other day. I pulled out the checkbook to pay for it. The guy said, by the way, we have 36 months, 0% interest. Now, did you know that a dealership gets a spiff from the finance company if they get you to finance it?
Yeah, sure did.
They had me at 0%. Because my money is in a high yield savings account at 5.25%. Why would I take $48,000 or $44,000 out of a 5.25% and pay it all off if I can be earning that money and still after only putting $7,000, right? Financing is negotiable. Some of your buyers have more money and more ability than others. Guess what you're going to learn to find out? Because it can strengthen the thing. Any listing agents in here ever looked at 2 offers that are really close, but one's putting 40% down and one's putting 5% down?
Sure.
What if the 5% person actually could have put 40% down, but nobody ever talked to them about it? Happens. Okay. Here's where it gets funky. Line subparagraph F, line 206, it says seller compensation. That's a line now. It says seller compensation to the broker assisting the buyer. Seller agrees to pay broker assisting the buyer the seller's funds at closing ... $blank. Now that's going to come from a conversation on the exclusive right to sell that we'll go through. But do you see it? Now, we're going to circle back to this, but just let me say something right now. Because I've heard some people saying, well, I'm still going to charge 6%. like I've always done, which by the way, we're gonna have a mindset conversation about that a little bit later, since you said later. I'm still gonna charge 6% and then I'm just gonna pay the buyer's agent 3%. Guess what the exclusive right to sell tells you you cannot do?
Say that.
You say that, do that, in any way participate in that. You cannot split your commissions. You are negotiating your fees when you list the house. You are negotiating your fees when you're helping somebody buy a house. We'll circle back to that in the exclusive right to sell. Actually, guys, that's going to give a lot of power. If you're a seller's agent, you should be like going, right? Because those lowball offers all of a sudden might change some things. You had a question?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, God, you want some paper? I gotcha. We got some more hands for paper. Who knows what the average age of a real estate agent is?
53.
53? Yeah,
That's what it was when I started. It was 15.
it's still about 52 is what I think it is now. No wonder we need all the paper, right?
Good point.
We're all old, right? So, some are sitting over here going, old people, like, you know, oh, reading glasses. I got trifocals, man. So
I
anyway.
didn't know they made those.
Yeah, they did. The first week you walk around in trifocals, you get to stare at your like. So somebody knows what I'm talking about, right? So, all right. So let's keep going on this. Your seller compensation to the broker assisting the
They're
buyer.
cut back. They should be
You're going
cut
to start
back.
putting that in there. Here's what's interesting. Think about this. If you don't have anything in writing, like Scott can go to his listing and he can say, hey, we're gonna put 3% to the buyer's agent, and everybody agrees on that. But there's nowhere it's in writing. And if it's not in writing in real estate, what?
It doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist. So everybody can agree on that, but all of a sudden an offer comes in at $10,000 below. What's one of the first things the sellers are gonna start saying? What's the commission? Or what a fee? Or I don't want to do 3% anymore. I am not here to tell you what to do in that situation. I'm telling you to be prepared for that situation. We're going to talk about some different scripts around that, some different conversations around that, as far as what to do. Just understand that it's not going to take people long to figure out, wait a second, I'm not obligated to this. If everything's negotiable, everything's negotiable. How are you going to talk about that? And some of you might be saying, like, you know what? I've been working with these people for 20 years. Well, those people probably have televisions. Do you think this is going to be all over the news the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th of August? Sure it is. And it's going to be talked about. So I think for some people, you're actually going to make more money. Some people, if you're not good at your skills, might make less. All right, so you go down to 209, the very next section there, number 2, under F, it says additional seller paid closing costs. Have we always negotiated additional seller paid closing costs?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And we've even talked about getting really good at your finance, which the old people in here, Scott, I'm not talking about you and me, okay? But back in the old days, we would pretty much qualify people and decide whether we wanted to work with them before we ever talked to a lender. Is that fair to say? Because we actually knew what the ratios were. Right? And so you're gonna have to either get really good at that again or get really good with your lender so that you know how much fat there might be in the closing cost when you get to the end. Because then you can turn those into an invoice that the seller pays for the buyer for your compensation. The next number 3 is cost not payable by buyer. Has that always been in the contract?
Yes.
Okay. So that's still in there. Any questions about that so far? Any thoughts? Asa?
I might be a little bit ahead, but seller compensation to broker assisting buyer. So, but before, if I'm a listing agent, I've already discussed my fee.
Yep.
So if I discuss my fee, well, okay. So this contract will be coming to me from a buyer, from a listing agent.
Right.
And the buyer's agent is gonna put in this box here on line 206, 207, asking for compensation from my seller. So if the seller's already agreed to pay me X amount of dollars or for every percentage, how can we accept that? I might be a little ahead.
Well, let's just say it's a $300,000 house and you've discussed 3%. I can do that because it's $9,000. We can all do that math. Okay. So if I came in and they offered full price at $300,000 and they ask for $3,000 buyer compensation, I can say, hey, Asa, I got great news. We're giving you a full price offer, and the part we're gonna pay the buyer's agent is exactly what we talked about.
Well, I guess, well, how are we saying that we're gonna pay a buyer's agent? Because what I'm gonna pay a buyer's agent in my listing agreement?
Not anymore.
Right, so how?
Here's the really annoying part, I don't have any answers about this yet. Before I show your house, I gotta call you and find out what I'm gonna get paid.
On everyone,
On every single freaking
that
show.
stinks.
Right, but I understand that, I understand all of that, but even still, my commission or my fees,
Your compensation.
my compensation, gotta learn that word now. My compensation is in my listing agreement. The compensation for the buyer's agent is in
Not.
that
Not
list.
listed in
It's not.
It's not listed,
It's not even in the agreement.
right, so in
You got a verbal agreement.
So I think what he's trying to say is
They can each all be different on what, you know.
on what the buyer agent wants.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
So,
Because if I'm paying cash for a house, I can just keep it out of the contract and say, oh, I'm gonna pay you a flat fee of $15,000.
but my seller has only agreed to pay me and not to pay a buyer's agent. So how do we specify what a seller will contribute to a buyer?
So-
That's what I'm.
You cannot advertise a website that will answer that question on MLS, as I understand it. And I think I'm 99.9% sure on that. You're gonna have to figure out, like, you're gonna have to get good at your answering machine. Today's listings, 123 Main Street is paying 3%. 456 Main Street is paying 2.5%. 91011 Main Street is paying nothing. You're gonna have to have it on your answering machine or answering machine. Or you're gonna have to have, like, I keep talking about this, I just need to go on. ChrisPaysCompensation.com or ChrisLengquistPays.com. You're gonna have your own website, and we're all gonna have to figure out. Now, as I understand it, a brokerage can set up a website. I believe that's true, and I'm trying to find out for sure, but all of our agents would be able to email the front desk or Savannah and say, my new listing is paying 123. Have you heard anything from your training on that? Okay, I believe that our brokerage can do that. But because the way Keller Williams is set up, Prairie Village, well, Kansas City, what do they call these guys now? Kansas City Metro, Overland Park, Shawnee, Raymore, they're gonna have to have their own websites because we all have different brokers.
But we can't advertise that website on the MLS.
Can't advertise that,
No.
so, yeah.
What about a rider on our sign?
Yeah.
You can do that. You can put a rider on the sign, you can get a billboard along the US 69 highway and say, I pay 3% on all my listings. You can
Except
do
we
that.
don't get to take that.
Well, you
No,
can just say, I don't take any listings. So, you can say, my clients pay this and do that. So whatever you want to do outside of the MLS, but basically the settlement and the DOJ has been, like, the DOJ is, they haven't been involved in any of this, but they've been right there with their lawyers on all of it. Okay, so they're watching to see, because some of you are getting emails saying, hey, join my commission website. The DOJ has said, we don't advise that.
Oh,
And generally, whenever the DOJ says something like that, I go,
so good.
like, they have more lawyers than I do, and they can bankrupt me even if I'm right.
Yeah, that's right.
But can we do it on social media or not?
You can put up social media, you can say, I'm Jennifer Carr, I just listed 123 Main Street, and I'm paying $40,000 buyer agent.
Don't have anything to do with MLS.
Don't do it in the MLS.
How about Zillow?
I think Zillow is being looked at as a default,
From the MLS.
from the MLS.
Download your feeds from there.
Yeah, anything that has that, there are some questions I still don't have 100% clarity, but I'm 95% on that one. And you can think that's it. And by the way, for some of these questions, if you just want to like have a beer or a coffee at 11 o'clock at night, just Google NAR FAQs, NAR settlement. And you'll find that link to the NAR site, and there's like 110 or 112 questions.
And they're downloadable and printable.
Or downloadable.
I'm a big fan.
So can I push, Asa, can I push back on something you said real fast? Okay. Asa said to me, I'm not gonna be able to know what the compensation is until you give me a list, right? You've always been able to do this, although I've seen it like once in my 23-year career. As a seller's agent, if you've got somebody willing to pay and you've got people coming to your house, and you don't have an offer, why don't you send an offer? Why don't you send an offer with the compensation already filled in? A seller can make an offer to a buyer.
Yes.
You can do that. Again, get out of the frickin' box you've been in for the last whatever years and start thinking like a business person. So just a little, think differently, because whoever does, is gonna make some money.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, any questions about that before we move on? All right, closing and possession, have those always been negotiable?
Sure.
Okay, when you get possession of the agent, you know, and when the funds are available, that's certainly negotiable. If it's a cash sale and you gotta have, you know, the appraisal done, is that negotiable? Yes, I guess. Okay, a cash sale versus a finance sale is negotiable. The type of financing is negotiable. Why is the type of financing maybe important to a seller?
They don't want FHA.
They may not want FHA or VA. Closing timeline. Yeah, there's a lot of things. You know, you know, during the rush, during the Great Recession, and all these other people, money people that don't get me started. But all these other people, money people, they would go to a hard lender, and then they would come to me and they say, I got cash. And I was like, great, show me proof of funds. Then I would get some letter that said that somebody hasn't even walked through it and everything. And I was like, that's not cash. So pay attention to the financing. Some of you are just taking the buyer's agent's word, woo, cash. Are you sure? Ask for the proof of funds. Okay. Loan applications, that's negotiable. Loan applications, lender, appraisal. Utilities, you know, utilities, if you're buying heating oil and that kind of stuff, septic tanks, that's negotiable.
Propane tank, you mean?
Propane tank, yeah.
Yeah.
There's still homes with heating oil? Anyway, but maybe not, there are in the Northeast, like all over the place.
Septic tanks are not
So-
negotiable.
Well, the septic tank would be negotiable on who's pumping it.
It's something that, but not a
Yeah.
mistake.
Surveys are negotiable, inspections are certainly negotiable, additional structures are negotiable. Not an unacceptable condition is negotiable, offer to renegotiate is negotiable. Okay? Now I'm over on brokerage relationship is negotiable on page 13, expiration date is negotiable on page 15. All right, so that's pretty much the real estate contract. The big difference is that's where you're establishing how much the buyer agent's gonna get paid for the seller agent or the buyer agent. Everybody clear on that? Heather?
Yeah.
That's okay.
I thought, go back to I call it the money page.
The money page, oh, I like that.
I thought there was talk about calling it seller concession.
Well-
I don't know if there's an actual spot for it. So what's the difference between putting the buyer or the compensation on line one and putting concession on line two to pay the buyer? How does that affect the buyer?
So compensation to the broker is what I would call it. Concessions though are just like, let's just say that is a conventional 6%, Sean?
They put 10% down or more.
Okay, so if the buyer's putting down 10%, they can ask for 6% seller paid closing costs. But if it's only gonna take 2.5 or 3% of that for the buyer to actually close, then you've got a gap of 3%, right? Okay, so then you can actually create an invoice as a buyer agent for that deal for the sellers to pay the buyer's agent on that gap. Follow me? Does everybody follow me on that?
Well, I'm confused.
You can get paid multiple ways. What you can't do is exceed what you agreed to in the buyer agency contract. But let's just say I got, like, this is where savvy negotiating. Do you know how many times over the years, like I've sold 3 houses in the last 10 years, right? But when I was really doing this, people would regularly come to me and they would ask for 6% because that was the maximum allowable. And then what happens 72 hours before closing?
They couldn't absorb it all.
They couldn't absorb it all and they're calling me and they want me to do what?
Reduce.
They want me to go to my seller and have it reduced. And most of the time, when we were accepting the contract, most of the time I would say to the, hey, so they don't realize they're not gonna be able to use all their those costs here. So I'm just gonna tell you about 2 to 3 days before closing, they're gonna want me to reduce the sales price. They're gonna want you to reduce the sales price to make up for that difference. Are you gonna be okay with that? No. Well, most of my sellers said, yeah, I'm fine with that. But I'll just never forget this one time. I'm not saying I'm a good person or a bad person, but this agent tried to big shot me all the way through it. And I knew when we took the contract, there was about $4,500 that was gonna be left over. And when he got to it, I said, I've already talked to my seller about it. I don't even need to check with him. He said, no. He goes, well, what am I gonna tell my buyers? Tell them you don't know the finance.
You don't know what you're doing.
Exactly. Because he was big shotting me the whole way through. Right? So also understand that you're in a cooperative business. You know, and listen, if he had just told me, because I already knew he'd only done 2 deals in his entire career, because you can look it up on MLS,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And he's big shotting me. And he's still, he actually, anyway, but he big shotted me. And so I tried to be nice to him, and I just said, well, this is gonna come. I promise you it's gonna come. The seller's like, no. You tell him no, what's coming. So, but you're gonna be able, if you know this and the other agent doesn't, if you're a buyer's agent, and you know, I'm just gonna make up a number, you're gonna get paid $10,000. But you know, you're 99.9%, you check with Sean or whoever your lender is, and you go, I think there's gonna be like $3,000 left over here. So rather than ask for 10,000, I'm only gonna ask for 7,000, which will put me in a stronger position.
So that you're looking, like you're asking for less than everyone else.
Yep.
Buyers.
Exactly right. Now you're paying, you're rolling some dice, right? You're rolling some dice, but if it gets you the house, it might be worth it.
Okay, I'm confused. Probably nobody else is. Okay, I want to do a scenario.
If you're confused, at least 4 other people are.
Okay, so it's FHA, 6%, right?
Yeah.
On the.
Well, FHA is 3%. 6, sorry. That's why I'm not a
Okay,
limit.
so you're saying, as a buyer agent, I'm gonna do 7,000, for example, on the broker compensation and 6%.
I'm saying you could, if you think you're in a bid, multi-bid situation.
If my buyer agency said I was getting $10,000.
Yes.
And then on the 6%, they're not gonna use all that, so I'm betting on there's gonna be 3,000 left. But doesn't something have to be signed to say, okay, I'm turning?
It's already signed and they've agreed to 6%. Now all you're doing is by the way, we just did this 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago on a contract. So we took that leftover seller concessions, right? We took that leftover seller concessions. It wasn't my client, it was one of my team's clients. Took that leftover seller concession, turned it into a buyer's broker invoice, and it was closed through the sales costs.
So are we creating that or Trisha's creating it
Where Tricia will create it, because you still gotta get paid through the broker.
through the broker?
Yeah.
So do we do that through command then?
Now you're way out.
It'll get worked
of
out.
my-
It'll get worked out. It'll get worked out. Don't worry about it now. Okay.
I have 3 softwares I don't even know how to log into.
Okay,
So-
okay.
So,
It says
Chris,
you're still paying the 6% fee for the FHA.
If that's what you've agreed to. Like if you're buying a $100,000 house, 6% is 6,000, right? So that's what you're gonna put in there, an additional seller paid closing costs.
But if it only comes
To
to
3,000, so long as it doesn't exceed what you're at as a buyer's agent fee, you can add.
adjust it and I don't have to do anything else.
So how about next Tuesday or Friday, I run everybody through the numbers on that? Would that be good?
I know, I understand.
I think somebody on Zoom
Thank
is
you.
having questions.
Somebody on Zoom's having, would somebody else have any questions? Did I say? Okay, somebody on Zoom, all right.
that's me.
Dustin, yes,
Speak loud.
yes, Dustin,
Can you hear me?
yes.
So Chris, in that situation that you were just talking about, where you created an invoice and got $3,000 back, were you already getting a regular 3% commission and then that was added on top of that? I'm just curious here.
No. This particular buyer felt more comfortable paying the agent out of pocket.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so any other questions about this before we move on to exclusive buyer agency? Let's go to exclusive seller agents. Is there any more questions on this?
Really, the only thing that's changed on it is that,
That money page.
yeah. Okay. Section F1 is the only thing changed.
What, we're going to the listing agreement?
We're gonna go to the exclusive right to sell. By the way, do you feel like the information you're getting here, is it giving you more anxieties or giving you a little bit of like, okay, I got this? Well,
That's that question at the end.
yeah, that's. By the way, does anybody have any points they'd like to make about the contract before we move on? Do you have some points that you think that I should have made that I didn't? Some of you I know are studying this. Okay, cool. If you come up with other points, guess what? I'm not the knower of all things. We is greater than me. Right? So if you hear something, let me know.
I got a quick question on.
Yes, Chris.
The listing. I actually have a listing and I'm not heard from the seller in like 2 weeks. If they do not sign the new addendum.
You're out of contract.
Oh, really?
Doesn't matter if your expiration is December 31st. Once August 17 comes, that contract is no longer enforceable.
Well, I thought I saw something in the FAQ that is one amendment, like.
They have to sign.
16. The 16th, okay.
17.
You're right, you're right.
These
These will be available, I've heard, on August 5th to that. August 5th. Yeah, you can start doing this on the 13th, 14th, 15th. If you're, okay, so
Gotcha.
Becky is asking if I'm already under contract on midnight, 11:59 PM on August 16th, you're good. You don't need any more forms, just write it out like you've always written it out. Okay? But if you're not under contract, you are now out of contract the next day, so you need to get your extension signed. There are forms in here we will go over before we're done.
Is under contingency considered contract?
Oh, God, Jennifer, I don't know.
Yeah. For you. You just, you don't know these.
I know, that's a-
Jennifer, question, good question.
It's a fantastic question. I have not considered it. In my mind, you're already under contract.
I would think so, but I don't know.
Yeah, in my mind, you're already under contract. But remember, I'm an associate broker at this business, so Brenda is our.
That deal falls through, you're probably gonna have.
Yeah, then you start.
Right, yeah, that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Oh, yeah. So Wendy was here on Tuesday and we were like, Wendy, can people use you on this? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So exclusive right to sell contract. So I'm just gonna go through negotiable things again on our way to the differences. So on page 1, you can negotiate first of all, do you know that even this, just having this is negotiable? Do you know there's not exclusive sales contracts, right? Yeah, so anyway. So you can do that, you can negotiate the beginning period, the purchase price. You know, the broker is gonna do this and that, you can, I like page 2 there on line 85, allow broker to accept deposit to be applied against the purchase price. And that you can keep a percentage of that if it doesn't close, you know that?
Yes.
I always did 50%, but that's just me. Line 85. By the way, I enforced that several times. Cause I've done all the work. So anyway. On line 145, you know, do we authorize the broker to disclose or not disclose? That's negotiable. Other offers, that's negotiable. We keep going and we go to page 6. Agency is negotiable. Now, keep in mind, an agency is governed by Brenda.
Got a question.
Yes.
Going back to seller authorized broker to disclose the following, no, excuse me, terms and conditions. Can you show the contract?
Sorry, where are you, Rick?
Page 3.
153.
152.
Seller authorizes broker to disclose the existence and terms of all offers. I think that it's certainly, you can show it. I don't know why.
I have Brenda is
She doesn't
recommended
like
we
it.
never check that box. Yeah.
Well, I didn't say she recommended it. I said.
You can do it, but she doesn't recommend it.
Right.
It's up to you. It's like in Missouri, is dual agency allowed in Missouri?
Yes.
Yes. Do we allow it?
No.
There you go. So if Brenda doesn't want to check, don't check it. Let's go to page 6 real fast. Seller consent to brokerage relationships is negotiable, compensation to brokers. Here's what it says.
What page, John?
Page 6. Compensation to brokers. Seller acknowledges that there are no standard compensation rates and the compensation for this contract is fully negotiable and not set by law. We had to put that in there because some people were saying I have to do this. Right? So the compensation to the listing broker, seller agrees to pay the listing broker compensation, which shall be whatever you want it to be.
But it has to be a set amount.
It has to be a set amount.
So my percentage,
It can be a percentage. It can be a fee.
Can be a
Yes, it can be a percentage or a fee. Other compensation, of course, in that TC fees, if you want it to be, or expertise fees. I was selling $30,000 houses, like 10 a month. That's not a lot of big commission, so I always had an additional fee on top, kind of a hefty, right? So whatever it is you want to negotiate for, this is the time to do it. And then it dropped down to D, compensation. Oh, no, let's actually stay there. Line 304. Let's read that out loud. The compensation shall be due and payable if listing broker or anyone else produces or finds a purchaser ready, willing, and able to purchase the property at the price and terms offered now or at the price and terms acceptable to the seller at a later date. Compensation is exclusively for the listing broker's services and is not subject to sharing, splitting, or otherwise paying to the buyer's broker. Seller may negotiate to cover some or all of the buyer broker's fees, which must be included in a separate contact, well, that's interesting, such as a real estate contract. Did everybody get that?
got it.
Any wiggle room in that? I'm sure Mike's got this, guy can find something, but. Yes.
The other day, Kyle mentioned this scenario, if we, in our seller's agreement, put 6%. Because if we end up switching to a transaction broker and covering both sides, we're covered at 6%. And with the option of reducing to 3% if another agent is involved in the transaction, right? That was an allowable.
That's something he was saying, I don't know the veracity of that. I'm not saying he's right, I'm not saying he's wrong, but like I've been saying that we should have a variable rate. Like I see what he's saying there, because you can always go back and lower it, right? Nobody's ever been sued because you charged them less,
Right.
right? So, but here, even my thing, I'm questioning, because I've just said, I will sell your house for X. For X.
Right.
But I've always said, in additional comments, I'm gonna put plus Y. Because if the ASA comes and wants to be the buyer, and says, I don't want to pay a buyer's agent, I want to get rid of that person, I just want to come straight and sell. Well, now I have more liability, I have more contracts, I have more inspections, I have all this other kind of fun stuff. I'm charging for that. And I'm gonna use that. But why? But that says, because when I do that for ASA, whether he's represented or not represented, I'm now what? His buyer's agent.
Right. So my question is, like, if we're doing that, is that something we should try to cover on the seller's agency side, or if we're negotiated at 3% on the seller's agency, and that is coming into play, we can put ourselves in on the sales side or on the contract side with the additional 3%? Is that the best way to
I
capture
think you're
that?
gonna have that conversation, but it's squishy until it's in writing. Listen, I am welcome to be incorrect on this. Brenda's on vacation today. We all deserve time to win. She'll be here Tuesday and Friday though. But write that question down, and I'm also gonna make a mental note of that.
Maybe a dumb question, but
I doubt it.
I was trying to think of it, so you may just ask it. If you have a listing and they're willing to pay 3%, they understand how it benefits them. Are you putting 6% on the listing agreement and then an offer comes in at 3%? Are you admitting this to 3%? Or
I don't recommend it. I recommend you deciding how much you're going to get paid for representing them.
so you would put 3% on your listing agreement? The buyer agent's 3%.
And then I look and say, we're gonna pay the buyer's agent 3%, is that right? Great. We shake on that?
But where does it say that in this?
It doesn't.
Yeah, you're not going
That was my original
They're
point.
gonna
That's what I was
say-
thinking. Okay.
They're only gonna see 3% and they're gonna think that's all they ever have to pay.
Now, that's why we're gonna have to, this is a point of negotiation.
Yes, yes, yes.
This is a conversation that you have to have. Listen, Juan, thank you for letting me sell your house. Here's the deal. There are 13,000 real estate agents in Kansas City and none of them works for free. You understand that, right?
Yes.
Did you receive a paycheck from your 40-hour-a-week job last week? Okay, fantastic. No agent's gonna work for you for free. And if you're in a bell curve house where first-time home buyers are gonna wanna buy, they're barely coming up with the 5% down, they're barely coming up with the closing costs, and now you want them to pay 10 or 12 or 15 grand to that. So guess what? You can do it that way, but what I'm recommending is that you pay a flat fee of X or a percentage of Y. And then we advertise that all over because we want the greatest amount of buyers. I'm okay, I'm here to represent you. If you wanna offer nothing, that's great. We're gonna have a lot of conversations about why you didn't have any showings. That's my guess.
But
Right.
it sounds to me like we need to be having that conversation of if somebody's under offering, then they're gonna want to, if we said, yeah, we'll pay the 3% and they offer 20,000 less,
Yes,
then that becomes negotiable to say, then pay
Yes.
your own fee.
yes, yes.
It's right here in the contract, line 206, when you do the contract, you're writing that in.
Yeah.
You're writing in where the fee.
Thank you,
And if
Vivian.
you're doing transactions there, can you pay it out too?
That was my question.
Like the same buyer, so it would be the same.
Yeah,
That would be where that.
yeah, so that answers my question.
Yeah.
So if I'm double signing a deal, I now.
We can capture it there if we end up
Right.
on the other
I
side.
see Jennifer's not happy about this, but that's.
But I also think if you have a conversation with your sellers at the time and say, you know, when you're talking about the 3% and then, and for the buyer's agent, if perhaps a buyer comes in and they do not have representation, I will do the paperwork for X, Y, Z. And, you know, we're gonna have to be keeping track of this and going back to what Jackie was saying, this person's offering 2.75. This seller's offering 3% or whatever, and we're doing it on handshake. This is gonna be pretty crazy to keep track of.
This is why our negotiation skills are gonna have to be
This
in
is
our
why,
organizational.
I don't know.
So like line 300, if they wanna pay the buyer's agent and pay us, so we're writing 6% there?
Nope.
Because then down below on 315, you're just check marking.
So go back to page, lines 304 to 309. We cannot split our commission with the buyer broker.
So they're just gonna check mark that they authorize it,
They're gonna authorize it and it's gonna be.
and then they're gonna see it on the contract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the new people are like, I don't understand what the big deal is. Right? Because this is what you're learning from the beginning.
They're
right?
gonna say right here, hey, I only agreed to 3%.
Right. I think this is why you gotta have your and by the way, hang on a second, I'll come to the names and the names. By the way, if you're one of those, if you're a computer warrior agent, it's like, whoop, I'll just send this over, you just click on the yellow dots. Go ahead and call Mike Hughes, he's a real estate attorney. Okay, go ahead and give him a retainer. So you're gonna have to start going back to having conversations with people.
hear.
Okay, hey, I'll come to you third, Levine. Denise?
Is it allowable for the sake of some of our aged brains, as we're working with multiple sellers to go, okay, this one agreed to pay this or offer this to buyers, agents. Is it allowable for us to get that in writing via email from the seller to say,
Not binding.
that's right, but
We can all agree. But have you ever agreed to something that changed when you actually got something?
if, like legally, because they're saying we can't do that, we can't, like, but for our own sakes of keeping
I see what
it
you're
straight.
saying, like when we book our showing, maybe broker Bay can send an email and say.
Can't send it through broker.
Can't send it through broker.
Between us
That's not
sellers. I think between us and our sellers.
Yeah, so, guys,
Just following up, after we get this signed, just following up, that you agreed to pay 3% to the buyer's agent, so I make sure I'm communicating that effectively with the buyers.
And it all goes out the window as soon as the offer comes in.
Right.
So you're gonna have, don't overcomplicate this. You have an agreement with somebody. Most of you don't have so many listings that you can't keep the conversation straight anyway.
Right.
Go get 15 listings so that you can keep it straight.
Yeah.
Have your notes app open on your Apple iPhone. Android people don't know what to do for you.
Yeah.
Have your notes app open and keep your notes. It's really not complicated. And then you were next. So.
Yeah, so
I'm just trying to say, let's keep it simple.
you good. So line 300 is a dollar amount.
Line 300 can be a percentage amount.
Or it can be a percentage.
Can be a percentage amount.
It can be a percentage. And that is just what is going to the listing agent or the listing agent's broker.
Yes.
Period, point blank. But when we get down to line 315, we're just specifying
We're agreeing.
we're just agreeing, the seller and I are agreeing that they agree to pay a commission to the buyer's agent. We don't know what it is.
And by the way, I think we're agreeing that you said 3%. Is that correct?
I don't know if we can say,
You said.
I can say that.
That's only for the seller.
I could, well, no. So, but I can say like, okay, we've already settled it. I'm getting paid
Right.
X, right?
Yeah.
And you said you'll pay the buyer's person 3% or 2% or 15%. I say, and what I think we're agreeing to is that you'll pay the buyer's broker 3%, because that's what I can tell other brokers. Is that
Okay.
right?
Right.
Okay.
So this is gonna be a running conversation.
So where it's gonna be running.
Can I finish my question?
The residential.
I think we'll set up a law.
Ace is not done, correct, Ace is not done.
I'm just trying to get clarity. So we're having the dialogue. So I just said, yes, I'm agreeing to the three. So that's just a verbal conversation that I'm having, and I'm hoping that the seller is still gonna make good on that when the offer comes in.
And if I'm a seller and somebody brings me a $50,000 under asking price offer, I might say, I'm not doing 3%, I'm doing X%.
So then you're negotiating on that line item of the contract.
Okay, I'm clear now. Thank you.
Thank you.
All I wanted to say,
Hang on, guys, let's let the dean say them here quick.
all I wanted to say is, folks, this is where scripts come in, learn your scripts. Do it with with a friend or whatever, and, it's just, if you're negotiating the same amount for the buyer's agent on every listing you have, you don't have problem taking notes, because you know what you've done, you know what you've always done.
That's it. Folks, do this.
And then push.
Are there really? Are there really good lawyers out there that can charge $400, $500, $1,500, $3,500, $4,000 an hour?
Mo, come on.
There are ambulance chasers.
Always.
Okay, which one are you gonna? Which one are you gonna be? So I'm gonna take let's take two more questions, but we have another form to go to. Okay, so.
If we have this signed on line 316, whether they authorize or don't authorize, and that gets negotiated and they flip on the contract side, do we have to come back and amend this, or will the contract override and work?
It is my thinking that.
Come on now, let's party.
But I don't necessarily know that. Okay.
Wait, what was the sign?
Which contract are we on?
And your agreement.
Can anybody hear me?
Dorothy wants to know what page we're on.
Dorothy.
I'm confused about the contract.
We're on page 6 of the exclusive right to sell.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right. Is that as clear as mud?
Yes.
Okay. So come back on Tuesday. Let's do it again, baby.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. By the way, just like Tuesday's class, this will be on YouTube by tomorrow at 5. And you can go back and watch this again, and come back on
So
Tuesday.
Raleigh, we could.
So let's go to the exclusive buyer agency.
I could submit.
And in the interest of time, let's just skip right to the meat.
So Raleigh, off it goes.
Page 2 of your exclusive buyer agency.
Yeah. What page?
So page 2 of the exclusive buyer agency. Line 75, paragraph 6, compensation to the broker. Buyer acknowledges that there are no standard compensation rates, and the compensation in this agreement is fully negotiable and not set by law. Yes, there were agents. We just had an agent the other day who was told that in Ohio, it's the law that it's X%. But still not, folks, we gotta get this right. Line 77, broker shall be entitled to compensation for assisting and negotiating in the procurement of the property acceptable to the buyer. Broker's compensation shall be, you get to pick one of the boxes or both of the boxes. And you get to describe what that is. I gotta tell you, in the investment property space, I would be likely to say, in my head, 3% plus X will be my flat fee rate. Right? Because that's my ego. That's the expertise. Am I negotiating my ability to, like, I think that some people, like if you're in the luxury space and you know how to negotiate luxury and you run around, I coach a gal in New Jersey. She's got like 16 under contract right now. She's a single agent. She used to be an opera singer. She can't walk across the street without somebody saying, "Well, will you miss my house?" Like I'm talking about $1 and $5 million homes, right? So there, she was all nervous about this. We sat down for 45 minutes on a coaching call, and now she's like, "I'm gonna be able to make a lot more money." Yes. Yes. You have a certain value that other people don't have, right? So as you get better at this. So anyway, buyer may seek an agreement from the seller to pay broker up to the compensation amount.
What line, please?
84. Buyer may seek an agreement from the seller to pay a broker up to the compensation amount. Buyer is responsible for payment of any compensation not covered by the seller, or buyer will forego the purchase of said property. That's 100% clear.
Let's go this way.
That was in the other.
It's 100% Jackie.
Let's go inside.
talked to the
Mama
seller's
give you a
agent on
treat.
that
Come on,
house.
let's go inside.
They're not paying.
Hurry. Let's go. We gotta go inside. Mama's go inside. Hurry. Right.
Delete her.
Go. This way.
iPhone 271 needs muted.
I think I got it.
They're all unmuted. They're all.
Oh, well, anyway, so, okay. So if you're the buyer and I'm the buyer's agent and I say, "Hey, Jackie, that house you want is cute as all get out," but they're not willing to pay a single dime towards buyer's agent compensation. We agree that I'm gonna get paid a flat fee of X or a percentage of X. So that's gonna come out of your pockets. You still wanna go see it?
Yes, because I really want that house.
Okay, great. Can I ask you a question? Where did the other $15,000 come from? Because you told me you just barely have enough for 5% down and closing costs.
I will find it.
Okay. Yeah, let me.
That's what I'm gonna say.
That's great, but I'm in the business
Right.
of helping people buy houses.
Yeah.
To go look at houses, I'm $252 an hour and 71 cents a mile. How many houses do you want to go look at?
Well, we won't look at that house today then.
Thank you. Talk to Dad.
Yes.
So we want to have these listen, guys, is that a hard conversation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris, are we verifying funds? Yes,
I would.
with those buyers.
What she
Yes.
asked, what you asked.
Are you verifying funds?
Sure. Why would you not? I'm not, listen, if you're a seller's agent, haven't you been asking for verified funds through a letter? So how is this any different? How many of you have ever on a wing and a prayer, and I say prayer, said, "Oh, I'm gonna show these buyers houses." I'm like, and you spent a whole day with them, you saw 6 houses. Their baby threw up in your car, and you get back and find out they can't even afford the place. Am I the only one?
Never.
The rest of you are lying. Every one of you has worked with somebody you didn't know whether they were qualified or not.
So basically, if we get that pre-approval letter, let's say they qualify for 360,000. I need to make sure there's that cushion there in case we do wrap around to.
I'm gonna
You need to
say,
know how much.
by the way, Mary, you need to
It's gonna be,
Yeah.
and if they have the money for that and to cover your commission.
I'm gonna be asking that lender, like, we've got a buyer's agreement for this, does this pre-approval letter?
that lender can't tell you though, until you tell, like, if you're my buyer, Mary, I'm gonna say, I'm gonna be calling your lender, so you need to let your lender know that I'm gonna be asking if you've got the funds. Then you can call them. Yeah. Hang on, so Bob.
And I've done this, where it was an off-market property. I had a buyer's agency, and they had to pay 5%. and we negotiated no commission to the seller because we knew there was a non-represented buyer also competing.
Okay.
Okay, that was no agent.
Got it.
And we got it. Then it was a simple thing. I called the seller back up, got a new contract. We'd like to adjust the price. Add 5% to the purchase price. Would you pay 5% commission? Yeah, sure, why not?
So long as it appraises, great.
And
That's different than traditional. That
and
works.
does that make this thing easy?
Yeah, you just have
All
to do
this
some amendments.
nonsense that we're talking about?
Guys, do you understand that commercial real estate has always been this way, right?
Yeah.
And do commercial buildings get bought and sold and leased all the time? I'm sorry it's different than what you were used to, but Bob just demonstrated, and by the way, Bob probably did that because Bob sells commercial real estate too, right?
Yeah, this was a cooperative.
I get it. So folks, this is not new to real estate, it's new to us. That's all. So just have some fun with it. Let's keep going here. This is like my favorite one with a buyer. So line 94, the retainer and additional compensation form, which is in the forms online. If you don't have a paper copy, you can go on and get that. 94.
Oh, you didn't run it on.
So let's say we have some buyer. No, I didn't run it off, but let's just think about the concept of this real fast. Will there be some buyers who have heard enough about this, they go, I don't know if I want to pay you. Or I only want to pay you $1,000 for what? Isn't the dirty little truth of real estate that all of our closings, we get paid more than we should because of all the stuff we do in ministerial work outside of getting a closing, right? Like we show people that don't buy, we answer telephone calls, do all these other kind of fun stuff, right? So now, if Jennifer's giving me trouble about agreeing to an amount that I'm gonna get paid, I'm just gonna look and say, Jennifer, you know what, you're right. You're right. I can do this another way. I charge $252 an hour. By the way, I just took my average sales commission, divided it by 50 hours, because that's the average real estate transaction. That's my hourly rate. Okay. I charge $252 an hour, and I charge 71 cents a mile. What do you want to do? Let's go. I need a retainer of $5,000. By the way, it'll probably take you somewhere in the neighborhood of about 40 to 45 to 50 hours to do this. 50 hours time, so you can have a lot of fun with this, guys. And by the way, in my head, and I think this is right, in my head, by the time I explain my hourly rate and my mileage fees and my admin fees and everything else, I think they're gonna go, can we just go back for compensation? Right? Think of the negotiation strategies before you ever have the conversation, because it's going to come up, I promise it. Promise you it's gonna come up.
We don't see the form yet, but like the retainer and compensation addendum, how would we enforce that? Like, what if a buyer does want?
When they're signing that agreement, I need a check for $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000, and it's gotta be made out to the brokerage, and I'm turning it into Tricia. Yeah.
Is that on the addendum?
The amount of money is, yeah.
Is it something when did want to do it?
Yeah, so, yeah. Yep. So I've got it in here somewhere. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah.
You can.
They're not gonna do that. They're not gonna hand you $5,000 up front.
Oh, you want to bet?
Think they will?
Yeah.
Commercial.
I think in
yes.
commercial and investment space, I bet you they will. I'll bet you even in luxury space, they might.
Luxury, they might.
I can see the luxury space, they might.
Yeah, I agree. That's gonna be tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, bell curve homes in Johnson County, probably not. But for that, I'm talking about that reluctant buyer who watched the news and now knows more about real estate than you with your 300 transactions.
Right. Don't waste your time.
I'm just gonna say, this is great. I'll work just like a lawyer. Would that be better? Like an hourly rate, $250 an hour? Well, I know an agent can do it for 100. Great, that's fantastic. How many deals have they done? How much negotiation training have they had? Hey, what? Instead of paying that guy $100 an hour for a deal that now you're gonna have to pay a real estate attorney $450 an hour for, why don't you just hire me at $252 an hour? Right? Go back and have these conversations. I'm literally at home planting butterfly plants, thinking these things through my head. It's fun. It's fun. Like, I'm mentally smart. The poor guy in the mirror has no chance. I'll wait till I get somebody that knows what they're doing, right? So That's part of the fun.
MREA podcast number 1 goes over that. I listened to it before I got here.
Yeah, there you go. MRA podcast. If you're not listening to those, you are missing out. Like I get 0% for telling you to listen to those things, but they are gold. If you have a team or thinking about having a team, if you're not listening to the episode like 24, 25, somewhere in the 20s, it's Ben Kenny. It's like a manual on how to build an organization.
Tell me that again.
The MREA podcast, look for the one that has Ben Kenny. OMG, fantastic. So anyway, it's my expectation that we're not going to answer every question here today, but do you feel better so far about all this?
Yep.